friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing episode 2 of what I've read so far in my fall TBR. And I'm really hoping it lined up, but if it didn't, it's okay. So if you don't know, I am doing a series where I'm actually trying to keep up with my fall TBR, and I am posting about the books I've read so far in that fall TBR, so you can figure out if these books are books that you would like to read also during this season, or if they're books you can say, hey, no, not for me, and that's okay. So we're going to be talking about 3 books in particular: Lady Macbeth by Ava Reid, Crypt of the Moon Spider by Nathan Ballingrud, and The Kamogawa Food Detectives by Hisashi Kashiwai. I hope I pronounced all those correctly. If I did not, I do apologize. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Melissa, and you found yourself at Melissa's Cozy Corner, where we talk about books, baking, and other cozy content. And today, as you can tell, we'll be focusing on books. So this is just a time for me to try to really stick to that fall TBR. Make sure I'm reading those books that I want to read, I plan to read. There's only one book on here that's not on my fall TBR list I made a couple weeks ago, and that's because this came up in a subscription box, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. So, as I did in my first episode, we're going to go ahead and split it into 2 main sections. We're going to have my first section, which I'll talk about all 3 of these books. I'll talk about what they're about, the genres, and also what I thought about them, my general thoughts, no spoilers. And then for the second half, so you don't have to skip around, for the second half, I'm going to make it spoiler filled. I'm going to talk about each of the books again, but go into my really deep thoughts about it, how I felt about them, and if I would recommend them. All 3 of these are very different. We have very different atmospheres in all 3 of them, so it's kind of a fun last couple weeks of me reading, and I'm really excited to talk to you about them. So I hope you're excited, because I'm excited, and I think we should just dive right in. However, before we do, there's a little surprise at the end of this video. I was craving pumpkin pie, but I haven't made one yet. However, I did buy a pumpkin, make pumpkin puree, and then I made pumpkin cinnamon rolls, or I am going to be making them because they're not done. I just made the dough. So I'm gonna make pumpkin cinnamon rolls at the end of this video with actually like pumpkin pie filling. So it's gonna be super delicious, I really hope, because I've never made them before. And I thought we'll talk about books, talk about spoilers, and then you can watch the very end with pumpkin pie cinnamon rolls if you want to. That's a little extra thing at the very end. But today, at the moment, we're going to be talking about these 3 books. So let's dive in. So we're going to go ahead and start off with Lady Macbeth by Ava Reid. This is a reimagining of Shakespeare's play Macbeth. This is also kind of a feministic view. The back actually says, like the little pink writing on the back, it says, from the best-selling author Ava Reid comes a reimagining of Lady Macbeth, Shakespeare's most famous villainess, giving her a voice, a past, and a power that transforms the story men have written for her. So we have this very feministic kind of idea where we have this very strong woman who, actually I've never read the Macbeth play, I feel like I need to now. And I was worried that I wouldn't understand this story without reading that, but I think you can read it without it. However, it did give me a little bit more perspective by just looking up what the play was actually about, what the story was, and what Lady Macbeth's kind of involvement was in that play. So that was helpful for me to kind of get a better image of who she was, but you really, really don't need that for this book because it's not necessarily sticking to that imagery of her from the Shakespeare play. So we follow a young woman, she's 17, and she ends up getting married off to a Scottish, she's French, and she ends up getting married off to a Scottish lord. And the Scottish lord is very big, very boisterous, very loud, and very strong. And we have this small, delicate, quiet lady, Lady Macbeth. Her real name is, I never really said her real name. It's one of those names where you just make up a name in your head instead of actually saying it, but there's like 5 different ways of saying it. No, 4 different ways, sorry. So you have Rochelle, Rochella, Rosalie, Rochelia. It's different ways to say her name from the different areas in the countries. So you have the French way, and then you have the Scottish way, and then you have like the specific way where her husband is from. So it tells you different ways of saying her name. But really, I just made up a name for her in my head. And then she was also Lady Macbeth. So Lady Macbeth gets married to this lord who's in Scotland, and he lives in this very far away, like kingdom, stone castle type thing. It's very dark. The whole atmosphere in this book is very dark. It's very gloomy. It's very wet. And we follow this young woman's story of her trying to figure out where her place is inside Macbeth's kingdom and what she can do and how she can manipulate things that are happening around her. She does end up having like a superpower, and we end up learning about how she can use that to better her situation. But it's kind of different. It's not what I was expecting. I think this is perfect for people who are interested in politics, which I'm generally not, so that's one of the reasons why I may have not liked this book. Spoiler, I didn't love this book. But if you like politics and intriguing storylines, you may like this. But to be honest, I had a really hard time connecting with the characters. I felt like it was kind of a weak story, and I actually wouldn't really necessarily recommend this. I really liked The Wolf and the Woodsman, like I had mentioned. Did I mention it? I think I've mentioned it in another video. The Wolf and the Woodsman is another story I read by Ava Reid. It was my first book I read of hers, and I thought it was entertaining. It does also have politics in it, but it's not as heavy as this one. And we follow a young woman who is more like a wolf. Her tribe is like the wolf tribe, and then she ends up getting taken to the woodsman's kingdom, and we follow that story between the relationships between that person, the wolf, and the woodsman. And I thought that story was a little bit more engaging, a little bit more interesting, and this one just fell short. I felt like I was missing something, and I never found like motivations for characters, or like I just felt like she was weak. And for being a feministic story, I was kind of bummed that it wasn't more. I think there's like 3 or 4 women in this story, and it's just a kingdom of men, and it's just, you just feel kind of like, wait, what's the point? Where's it going? What's actually happening? So no spoilers, but if you want to give this a try, then go for it. I'm not going to say you shouldn't read it. It's just not a story that I necessarily enjoyed. One, because there was a lot of political like balance between kingdoms and trying to understand about how the kingdoms were overthrowing each other, and also her balance of trying to figure out how she fits in that kingdom. So it's just a lot of that kind of background. So again, maybe not a book for me, but maybe it's a book for you if you like that kind of play with kingdoms and the movements and that kind of power play. But yeah, it was okay. It wasn't my favorite book. I'm not gonna lie, kind of happy to move forward. Ava Reid, I think, has a beautiful writing style. I do have to say that. I think her writing in here was really, really great. I really much enjoyed how she wrote. I loved how she strung her sentences together where it felt like you were just kind of being carried along in the story. So the writing isn't bad. I just didn't necessarily like the story. So I would read The Study in Drowning, because I think she's like a 50-50 author for me, where I'm like, yeah, I like this book, but maybe not this book. But again, you may like this book, and if you do, let me know. And if you read this, go ahead and put, what kind of emoji would you put down the bottom? Go ahead and put emoji of a bride. That'd be interesting. Put an emoji of a bride. Yep. And oh, that's what I did in my first video. If you missed if you skipped the spoiler part, the spoilers were focused, or I talked about how we could go ahead and put emojis down at the bottom to show if you've read the book or not. So if you've read Ava Reid, Lady Macbeth, I would love to see a little emoji of a little bride. Yeah. Crypt of the Moon Spider by Nathan Ballingrud. I can't figure out if it's Ballingrud or Ballingrud. So I should look it up. So this was actually not part of my Fall TBR. This was sent to me in my first subscription box by the Abominable Book Club. I joined that last month and I got my first box and I was really excited, and this book came in and I thought, this is really short. I can go ahead and pop it in between a couple books. So that's what I did. It's a folly horror book and I thought, I want to try to read more horror. This is definitely horror. So if you don't like spiders, don't read it. It's not worth it. It's not a book for you, and that is completely okay. But this is a 100-page novella, very short to the point, and tells the story exactly as it is. I do really love Nathan Ballingrud's writing style. I thought it was very poetic at times, very short sentences, and very also direct, because it's a novella. It can't just play around with like these ideas and filling in a lot of words for just willy-nilly. So I felt like this actually did a really great job using the space it had and creating the atmosphere that we needed. So you know what it's about. This is a horror sci-fi with spiders. Yes. So we have a woman and her husband who go to the moon, and the moon is actually an old place where these giant spiders used to live. And now they're using the spider silk to do some surgeries. And that's all I want to tell you. So I think it's quite fascinating. I thought it was really well written, definitely horror. My first like actual horror novel, which was really quite exciting, but I realized I cannot read it before going to bed. I did have a nightmare about spiders, but thankfully it wasn't a bad one. It was just like, oh, that's why I had that dream. So if you like horror, I definitely recommend this. If you're looking for something that's horror sci-fi, kind of like the Alien movie, like that's kind of what I got from this, is like if you like Alien, not all the other ones, just Alien, I'm thinking about the original, then you actually might like this as well. So that's all I'm going to say about this one, because it's a novella and I don't want to give anything away. The last one I read was the Kamogawa Food Detectives by Hisashi Kashiwai. I really feel bad because I'm really butchering that name, but this was an adorable Japanese literature. If you don't know already, I read a lot of Japanese lit. It's mostly the smaller novels that are cozy, comfy, focused with cats, and very short stories. So I've read Before the Coffee Gets Cold, The Cat Who Saved The Cat Who Saved Books, The Cat, something like that, and a couple other ones. So most of these novels, like these novels, not all Japanese literature, because there's a lot of different types of Japanese literature out there, but Before the Coffee Gets Cold, the Kamogawa Food Detectives, and some of those other novels focus really closely to these short stories in a novel. So we have, I believe, 6 different stories in here. Yep, 6 different stories in here, and it's about a small little restaurant that does detective work about a food or a recipe that you are craving, or you miss, or not craving, because sometimes you crave something you've never had, but it's focused on memories and then recreating that food from your memory. So you have a daughter and her father who work in this tiny little restaurant that doesn't look like a restaurant, and they run a detective agency outside the restaurant as well. And they go ahead and do detective work to find the recipe that you would love to have again. So we have 6 different stories. Each story is different, but there is a line that kind of connects all the stories together, like the father and daughter's relationship, and you kind of see that relationship not change too much, but kind of adjust throughout the different stories. It's very sweet, very cozy, very perfect for kind of like a cozy night in, or if you wake up on a Sunday morning and you would like to just cuddle up on the sofa, this is absolutely perfect. I love these types of novels. I think they're great, they're cute, and if you like cats, you're gonna enjoy it too. And if you liked Before the Coffee Gets Cold or The Traveling Cat Chronicles, I think you'll really like this one as well. It's Japanese literature, and cozy and cute. No magic. There's no magic in this one, but it is just a lot of fun and very sweet to read. And the stories are quite short. They're no longer than a few pages long, like 60 or 20. They range between, I think, like 20 and 30 pages. So that's it. You've already gone through the video. I've talked about the 3 books I've read. I also read one other Hemingway, The Old Man and the Sea, but that's not part of my fall TBR, so shh. But I really enjoyed these 3 books, or enjoyed the atmospheres. So we have one that's gothic horror, gothic reimagining. It's not horror. There's not horror in here, so it's gothic. It's gothic. Let's just say that. Gothic feministic. We have one that's a sci-fi horror, and then we have a cozy, comfy, sweet little novel. They're all 3 very different. I would actually recommend these 2. I would not necessarily recommend this one. So that's it. That's all I have. If you read any of these, sorry. If you read this one, put a cat in the bottom. Put like a little tiny kitty in the bottom. And if you read this one, put a spider in the bottom. And like I said, if you read Lady Macbeth, put a bride in the bottom. I would highly, highly encourage you guys not to put any spoilers in the bottom because I want everybody to have a chance to read these wonderful books. If you do want to put a spoiler, go ahead and write like spoiler with asterisks and then enter, and then you can write your spoiler down below so that way people don't like scroll down and accidentally read a spoiler of the book. But I would love to hear your opinions, what your thoughts were, if they were good, if they were bad. You can do just a thumbs up, thumbs down, not on the video, please, but just on the like as an emoji in the comments. Oh, and if you aren't subscribed, subscribe so that way you can kind of follow along and see if there's any books you want to read. I have a ton of other books that are part of my Fall TBR, which you can find here or here, I don't know which side, and I'm really excited to continue on this adventure. Again, some books might be added in here and there just because I end up buying books, I end up finding books, I end up having book packages delivered for a subscription box, and you never know what's going to happen. So thanks so much for all those who are sticking around just for the book part, the book explanation, the book descriptions. For those of you who would like to hear the spoilers, I am going to go into them in about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So if you do not want to hear spoilers, you've missed the point. You have to leave. Go away. I'm kidding. You don't have to leave, but I don't want to spoil you. So if you don't want to hear the spoilers, if you want to read these books for yourself, then I would highly recommend you watch one of my other videos, like this baking one, or my building your own Fall TBR, or not Fall TBR, bucket list. There's so many other videos out there that I would highly recommend to you. So we're gonna jump into spoilers now. So Ava Reid, Lady Macbeth. I did not like this book, and I gave it a 2-star. I'm trying not to do 2 stars anymore, but if I had to, I'd give it a 2-star because it was just very weak. I just felt like the characters in it were weak, the motivations were weak. There was nothing really like strong about this novel other than the atmosphere and the writing. Ava Reid does have a wonderful writing style, but it's just, I was just disappointed in the plot. So we have this young woman who ends up Rochelle or Rochelia or whatever her name is, and she has this power in her eyes. So she was bewitched when she was a child, and she has the power in her eyes to be able to influence what men are doing. So she can literally look them in the eyeball and say, eat an apple, and they would eat an apple and just kind of like zone out. Like they would not have control over if they could do something. So she has that power, and her father ends up making her wear a veil like this, so that way that power she doesn't use it on other people. So if she has the veil on, it doesn't work. And it doesn't work on women at all. So she can have the veil off in front of women and she can't influence what they're doing. So she ends up getting married off to Macbeth, who is the lord of this kingdom in Scotland, up in like somewhere. I don't actually really know. There's no map, so I can't point it out to you. I don't really know. I don't know Scotland's landing phases, but they're on a cliff, so the point is like really, really hard to break into their kingdom because they're like on a cliff end, and you have to climb up a hill to get to their kingdom. So it's hard to take over that kingdom. And so Lady Macbeth, or whatever her name is, ends up getting married to Macbeth. She moves to his kingdom, and at the very beginning, she's like, this man is big and gruff and scary, and he comes into her room at night because they're married, and it's the whatever generation where it's okay to, you know, take over your wife and sleep with her. I'm not saying that's a good thing, I'm just saying back in the day, whenever this was taking place, you have you have these different like expectations of what women and men were doing, right? And so we have her realizing and coming to this idea that, oh, she remembers reading that in this man's land and cultural things, the women get to ask for 3 things before they bed, so that way they can, you know, it ends up creating like trust or something like that. I don't know. And so she decides to manipulate him without using her eyes, using her brain, because she says she's really smart, and it's supposed to be like she's really smart. And she ends up telling him, hey, I want a necklace, this necklace. I want a necklace made of gold with a ruby in the middle. And she knows that Macbeth's kingdom has no minerals. So he has to go take over another kingdom to be able to get that gold for her. So what did he do? He says, oh, okay, I'll go and do this. And she's talking about how this person's a terrible person, how he's gruesome, and he's gruff and just not nice. And it was confusing for me because he ends up doing 2 of these tasks for her. Like, he ends up going over and destroying this kingdom. Crawford, I think is what it's called, which is the kingdom with gold. And he ends up being the lord for this kingdom. So now he's not just a lord for his kingdom, but he's a lord for the Crawford kingdom as well. And it ends up, he comes back and gives her the necklace, and he's like, ooh, ooh, ooh. And she says, no, now I want a robe or a cloak with the 7 whitest creatures in our land. And she thinks it's not possible, and we end up following the political stuff in the background too, and it just ends up being like this like balance of politics and her like asking for these things, and she's not manipulating him with her eyeballs, she's just asking him for it. And she's like, oh, he's a terrible person, but she's also being a terrible person because she's having him go take over these kingdoms and kill all these people just so she doesn't have to do her wifely duties, which I'm not saying, again, this is not something I would agree to at all at this time. But back in the day, when you were part of the royal family, you got married off to be able to create a heir for a king, an heir, not a hair, which I'm not condoning at all. I think it's disgusting. I don't think that's okay at all. But again, it's just generally what was expected. That was the way culture was back then. And so she was like, all these other women have to do it, and I now have to do it, but oh, go and get me a cloak with these 7 beautiful white creatures. And so what does he do? He does that. He ends up killing these beautiful white creatures just to make her a cloak, and she just seems kind of whiny. I want to make a quick interruption for a clarification. I don't think Macbeth is a good person. I think he's righteous, he's jealous, he's controlling, disgusting, he's a killer, he's prideful, he's just not a good person. However, when we're introduced to him at the very beginning of the book, we're not shown this, and I think that really messed with me because I was shown Lady Macbeth wants something, and Macbeth goes out and does it for her. Not saying what he's doing is good, but he's being helpful to his wife. He's also listening to her and getting advice from her and doing all these other things. We end up finding later out and further in the book all the bad things he is doing and has done in the past, but I needed to know that earlier on in the book so that way I could also hate him with Lady Macbeth. That balance was very off for me. Okay, now back to what I was saying. And then she ends up getting stuck in these situations where she could have just used her eyeball powers to get her out of these situations, and it was just so frustrating to read about her. And she's supposed to be the strong woman or the smart woman, and she's not doing that. She's supposed to be she's supposed to be like a symbol of feminism in this moment in this book because it's supposed to be a feminist retelling or reimagining. And she's not being strong, and it's frustrating. And then you have a love story that comes in here, so she's not in love with Macbeth, clearly, because she finds him gruff and gross. And she ends up falling in love with this other prince who is mysterious and dark and pale, and his eyes are mysterious. And he ends up being a dragon. Like, what the... Sorry. What in the world? Like... Why is he a dragon, and why is that important, and why couldn't she just like not have this separate love story? I understand like a lot of stories are motivated by love, but why couldn't it have just been motivated by a strong woman instead? And So I was just kind of disappointed. And then at the end, you're like hoping she just figures her stuff out and like for example, she gets stuck in the dungeon and the prince is behind her in the cell, and you have the right-hand man of Macbeth and his son. And not Macbeth's son, but the right-hand man's son. And they're standing in front of Lady Macbeth, and she's standing in front of the grate, so she's smushed in between the two sides, and she's trying to protect the prince. And instead of taking off her veil and just being like, go away, she doesn't. And then it's like too late. She ends up trying to take the veil off too late in time. And it's like, why didn't you just do this at the beginning? Use your power if you have powers. Don't bring in powers if you're not going to use them. Sorry. I was clearly frustrated in this novel. So, long story short, I just felt like the story was very weak. I felt like the plot wasn't really there. I think Ava Reid has a beautiful writing style. I really do. I love her writing style, but I just feel like the story wasn't planned out well enough. I felt like it was missing stuff. It was just unbalanced. And you have the three witches from the original like Macbeth story, and they end up being like ex-wives of Macbeth, and it was just very like messy. And then at the very end, I'm sorry, one more thing. At the very end, you have Lady Macbeth escaping with her handmaid, and then also the prince, and the prince isn't there, it's just the handmaid. So it's Lady Macbeth and the handmaid, and they're running to the stables to get a horse so they can run away together. And there's somebody like like a guard ends up running into them, and Lady Macbeth tries to punch him, and then she falls, or she like misses, and he punches her or something, I don't know. And then you have the dragon prince literally swooping in and saving her, and the dragon like eats her, and then he turns back into a prince, and he's like, my dragon knows you. And so she literally got saved by a swooping in dragon prince. That was frustrating. So, she does use her power at the end and ends up killing Macbeth, which good on her, like, sure. But I just felt very frustrated because I wanted a gothic, feministic, just strong book, and this just wasn't giving it to me. And I feel really bad by putting it down because I think it could have been really good. It just wasn't completely planned out, I think. And I'm not gonna say I'm never gonna read Ava Reid again. I'm really interested in reading The Study in Drowning. I'm interested in reading some of her other books. I just think this one was just not for me. Maybe because of all the politics, maybe because of the love story. So those are two things that just aren't really my thing. I don't generally like love stories that are weird and pop in randomly, and I don't generally like reading about politics. So maybe that was my fault. But that was my opinion on Lady Macbeth, so not a very positive one. I would love to hear your opinions. If you liked it, I would love to know why. What made you like this book? Maybe I'm just missing something, and that's completely okay. Not all books are for everybody, and they don't have to be. I mean, that's why we have so many different kind of creative people and different kind of creativity, because some stuff is good for one person and not for another. So tell me your opinion on Lady Macbeth. I would love to hear it. I'm going to move on to The Crypt Spider, or The Crypt of the Moon Spider by Nathan Ballingrud. Okay, I was just about to talk about Crypt of the Moon Spider, and then I realized my microphone has been dead for probably the last 15 or 20 minutes. So I do apologize because I don't know where I need to restart, and so I'm not going to. And so unfortunately you're going to have like part of this video with bad sound. I do apologize, but I hope you're okay with that. So we were just about to talk about The Crypt of the Moon Spider by Nathan Ballingrud, and this actually came in my first subscription box, the Abominable Book Club subscription box from the UK, and this was out of my realm. I don't normally read books like this, not because I wouldn't want to, but just because I don't really know where to start with horror books. That's just a whole new genre for me, and it's out of my wheelhouse. So I was actually really excited to hear about Gavin Can Read, or Gavin Reads It All, not Gavin Can Read, Gavin Reads It All, talk about a subscription box that does horror books, because I thought it would be absolutely perfect for this season. And I got 3 books from them. I have Crypt of the Moon Spider, Hybrid, which is a used book, and Basilisk, which is a snake book. So I haven't read these 2 books yet, but I did decide that I was going to read one of the books from the description box, no matter what, so that way I don't feel like I'm not utilizing it, I guess. And so I read Crypt of the Moon Spider because it is a novella. It's only 100 pages long, and I thought it would be a great kind of introduction into a little bit of a horror genre. And oh my goodness, this was creepy. This was so cool and so wicked and absolutely so well done. I love how it's written. I think Nathan Ballingrud, I saw that he has written a couple other things, so I would definitely check out his other things he's written, but I was hooked by the first lines. So the first sentence reads, looking through a small oval window of a twin-engine passenger shuttle which carried her over the moon's gray and rubbled plains, Veronica recalled a local myth which held the moon was the inhabited skull of a long-dead god who once trod the dark pathways of space like a king through his star-curtained palace. Looking down upon it now, she could almost believe it. The moon seemed to exude a deathly energy, the way she imagined the bones of a holy animal might. It would not have seemed strange to see a population of ghostly horses galloping across the dusty expanse. That's just the first page. I read more than one sentence, sorry. But how gorgeous is that written? And I felt like that was really something that Nathan Ballingrud really held throughout the entire story. Each sentence had a purpose, and that made the story so easy to read, so quick to read, and so enjoyable. So we have this woman and her husband who end up going to this moon, and the moon has a hospital that's located on it, and the husband is taking his wife there because Veronica, because she is depressed and she's been having these dark spells. I believe that's what she calls them. And she ends up wanting to go there to fix herself. And when she gets there, her husband's like, I love you, we'll see each other again. And in the end, she goes and sees the doctor. She actually gets like led to this room, and she gets sent to her room, and it's almost like a cell, and there's nothing in there. It's all white. It's all very clean and very uncomfortable and cold. And we end up following her journey of just trying to get this help. And she talks to the doctor, and the doctor's like, I'm sorry to tell you, but your husband's never coming back for you. And she realizes, yeah, she already knew this. So she knew that this was just kind of the end for her unless she got better. And that was the doctor's promise. And so she ends up going through her therapy sessions, and all hell breaks loose, for the lack of a better phrase to use. We have these people who used to worship the spiders that lived on this land or on the moon, and they've been using all the spider webs to go ahead and remove pieces of people's brains and sewing other people's memories and thoughts into other people's brains. So for example, if you had a memory of eating cheesecake last night, and then I remove somebody else's memory or thought and put it in yours, now you have a memory of eating cheesecake with ants crawling all over it. So they were splicing thoughts and memories together to heal the people that were, the rich and famous, and the people that were meant to go back and live a normal life. And then they were experimenting on people who were going to be forgotten anyways. So it's quite creepy, quite uncomfortable. You start getting a lot of spiders crawling. Oh, warning, I'm talking about spiders. So if you don't want to listen to this, skip forward. It's going to get quite gross and weird and uncomfortable. I won't go too in depth with it, but I just don't want it to creep you out. So sorry. So I'd skip forward. So you get spiders crawling out of wounds, and then you get these grotesque spiders slash human hybrids, because the people who used to worship these gods or these spiders are still living on this moon, and they're trying to repopulate the moon with the spider. And so they're trying experiments of trying to grow the spiders on themselves. So then you get people having legs growing out of them. It's super grotesque, super creepy, made me very uncomfortable. But it was so cool to read as well, because it was just such great imagery without being too grotesque about it. Like it was just very like well put in there without being nasty. Don't get me wrong, it was still nasty, but you get what I mean. And I thought it was just really interesting. I really enjoyed this. I think this is also like almost the limit of where I can go with my grotesque stuff, because it started creeping me out, made my belly a little but I really liked it. I really liked this. I would definitely read something else of his. I saw that he has a book or a collection of short stories that was turned into a movie called Wound, and I thought I could maybe watch it, but I don't think I can. It's really, really gruesome looking. But this was really beautifully done. I really enjoyed it. And if you like creepy, gothic, sci-fi horrors that are a little bit grotesque, a little bit funky, I hope you already read it, because I already told you spoilers. But definitely worth picking up. I mean, I didn't tell you the end, but I loved the end. I thought the end was really like happy, which is a funny thing to say, but I think it was like a happy ending for how creepy the book was. Very enjoyable, very delightful and funky. And now I'm going to talk about the Food Detectives, or the Kamogawa Food Detectives. Very weird transition, but this was so sweet and so wonderful. So we have 6 stories. Each story, the daughter, what ends up happening is somebody walks into the shop not knowing, or not, they knew what they needed from the shop, but the shop is not disclosed. So they don't have a sign, they don't have advertisement or anything like that. It's hard to find the shop. So the father who owns the shop always says, if you were meant to find us, you do find us, type thing. And so we have 6 different stories. Each story is just sweet, and you have each character come into the restaurant and they sit down and they enjoy and they love the food that Kamogawa makes for them, the father. And then the daughter, she's actually the one that's running the food detective agency, and she ends up doing the interviews, to asking, hey, where did you eat this last? Where were you? Who were you with? What do you remember? How do you feel? What were the flavors? What were the pieces that were in it? So that way they could kind of come up with what was happening. And I really liked this because there was no magic. You ended up having this ex-cop detective who went out and did detecting to find your long-lost food or meal that you really, really would love to try again. And each story is sweet and powerful in its own. I read the first one and I thought to myself, I don't know if I can get into this. But the more you read the stories, the more you wanted to read more. It was really interesting. So I read the first one, I was like, okay. I read the second one, I was like, oh, what's gonna be the next one? And then I would read what the food was gonna be, and it would get me excited. And I do highly recommend going to YouTube and looking at the food or searching it on Google, because that was really helpful for me to kind of get myself more into the story, especially with like the meals that I didn't know, like Buddha's bowl or Buddha's dream bowl or something like that. I didn't know what that was, so I Googled it and it was really interesting. It's something I would have never expected. So I just really liked this, but I love books like this that are cozy, comfy, easy to read, that you can just kind of get lost in and enjoy. This made me very hungry. I'm hungry for a lot of food right now, but it also got me back into baking, which I was really enjoying. So, spoiler, I can't really spoil you on this one because it's just stories that end up positive at the end. Like you're not coming into this thinking that something bad's gonna happen. You know that there's gonna be a positive end to each of the stories, and they're just really sweet. And there's like 11 books, I think, of this one. There's quite a few books, but only this one and the second one are, I think the second one's being translated and it'll be released in October. But all very amazing and sweet books. So I ranted for way too long about Macbeth, I'm sorry. I didn't talk too much about the Crypt of the Moon Spider because I just enjoyed it. I think it was creepy and great. And the Kamogawa Food Detectives, I can't really tell you much more than what I did because there's not really much to say other than, honestly, these 2 books were really great. 2 very different types of books. You have something that's going to be very, very scary and not for everybody. And you have something that's going to be sweet and cozy and wonderful to read, which is also not for everybody. I think I'm really happy with where I'm at with my what I've read so far in my fall TBR, and I'm excited to see what I'm going to be reading next. There's quite a few books that I have on my list. Currently, I'm actually reading my Agatha Christie one, which I'm questioning if I'm liking or not. Agatha Christie's always like a flip of a coin with me. I think I have to be in the mood for her, but I'm going to continue on, see what happens. But honestly, I'm really happy with all of the reading. If you guys are doing your fall TBR or what you guys are reading, I would love to hear if you guys are keeping up with your fall TBR. Again, if you like this kind of video and you want to support me and want to encourage me to keep doing this kind of stuff, go ahead and subscribe and give me a thumbs up. It really does help me out, and it's just a great way to know that I'm making the content you guys want to see. I really, really love this community that we're building here, and it's been so amazing and so great seeing your guys' comments and seeing your positivity and finding you guys on my Instagram, and it's just been so, so wonderful. Getting comments from you guys that are positive brings so much happiness to me. I can't explain the amount of joy I get when I see a comment from you guys, especially when you guys say you read the book too, or you like the video or anything like that. So thank you so much for being amazing and wonderful and being you, because you are the best. But I'm gonna let you guys go, kind of. I'm going to go ahead and make my pumpkin pie cinnamon rolls, but those are going to be afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the instructions and everything I do in the video at the end of this video, so that way if you don't want to watch it, you don't have to, but I highly recommend it because they're so, I don't know if they taste good or not, but they look so good. So I would love for you guys to continue watching it. It's just a fun, relaxing little recipe video. I've popped it on the end so that way if you're interested in making any pumpkin treats, I'm going to be kind of sprinkling them in throughout different videos. But I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of my community and being part of my life. I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a fantastic day. And I'll see you guys next week. Ciao! you.